Dear friends, good evening, good evening. Oh, Richard, we got one more guy coming in. Oh, look what we got over here. Yaakov coming in. But here, we got, we here. You know what? Just take a book. You got the last book there? Oh, there you go. Now we have officially ran out of books. Right, you don't need more than one. All right. Yeah, sit right over there, Yaakov. Okay, welcome. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the World of Kabbalah, brand new course. This is exciting, really exciting. Okay, we've all got our textbooks over here. In the textbooks, we've got a map. This is unusual. This is your official Kabbalah map that will guide you along the next 6-week journey. And I want to welcome you all. Okay, here's a little one. A Jewish mystic wants to go into investments. You know what he calls himself? This is a good one for you, Marshall. A venture Kabbalist. All right, a little corny. A little. Okay, we could work on that one. No, it needs a little bit more. It needs a little bit more meat on the bone. That joke. Okay, dear friends, World of Kabbalah. We want to dedicate today's class and this course in loving memory of Herbert and Sylvia Serlin, and in loving memory of Kenneth Andrew Lesser. Thank you, Marshall, for sponsoring this course. And, of course, to have in mind the merit of our Torah study tonight for our brothers and sisters in the land of Israel. There should only be peace and security, and that Hashem should bring success to the IDF who are fighting for the protection and security of our people and our homeland. Amen. So amen, amen, amen. That we should only have good news and continued miracles, God willing. And with that, dear friends, get ready for a wild ride because we got the World of Kabbalah over here. We've got coffee. It is my fault. There were refreshments prepared, and they are not here. So you'll all connect the dots of what happened. The point is, I apologize. What can I tell you guys? It happens. The World of Kabbalah. Today's class is titled The Evolution of Ego. And we got to first get our bearings over here. What in the world are we doing here? What's Kabbalah? You know, when I was marketing this course, I got two very opposite extreme reactions. Some people are very excited about it. Kabbalah sounds really intriguing, really interesting. I like spiritual ideas, okay? Some people were very, very apprehensive. Kabbalah, it's like Madonna type of stuff, and it's weird, and I don't know. And isn't there this idea you're not supposed to learn Kabbalah? Like, you're not supposed to learn it. Like, it's off limits. Like, so let's get a little bit of our bearings. What is Kabbalah? Is it Jewish? Where does it come from? Does it mean anything? Here's a story. There's a Jewish guy, Jewish businessman. He has a partner who's not Jewish. And this non-Jewish partner says, I'd love to see what your synagogue looks like. Your house of worship. Can I join you one? So the Jew says, sure, you could come with me this Shabbat, this Saturday. I'm going to my shul. Come, you'll sit next to me, and you could observe what we do. So the non-Jew comes there, and everything that's happening, he's saying, why are they doing this? What's the significance of this? So everybody gets up, takes 3 steps back, 3 steps forward. He says, what's going on over here? He says, we just started the Amidah prayer. Everybody gets up, and this is the silent prayer, and it's tradition. You walk back, walk forward. All right. And then they open up the ark. What's going on right now? What's the significance of that? They say, right now we are going to be reading from the Torah. Every Shabbos we read a portion from the Torah. Scroll one little portion. Hello, hello. Welcome. Take a booklet. And we've got a place right over here. There you go. The next person will have to figure it out. But for you, we got a seat here. All right, welcome, Francie. Okay. Stacy. What am I saying? Okay. And so what's going on, right? So they're taking out the Torah now. They're reading the Torah. And then they lift up the Torah. What's going on over here? What are they doing now? He says, well, right now we finished reading it, so we lift up the Torah. They're going to be closing it up or putting it back into the ark. So they put the Torah back in the ark, and then everybody sits down, and the rabbi starts walking up to the dais. And the guy says, what's going on right now? What's the significance of this? They say, well, right now is going to be the rabbi's sermon. Okay. And then he sees the rabbi stand by this dais, takes off his watch and places it right in front of him on the dais. He says, what's the significance of that? So he says, well, that, unfortunately, means absolutely nothing. Okay, so. Oh, first of all, my commitment to you is that we're going to be out of here 9 o'clock-ish. No. We're gonna try to do this on time because we don't want to get too lost over here. It's an hour and a half class, but most importantly, some people think the word Kabbalah is vague. What does it mean? What doesn't it mean? So let's define Kabbalah before we actually jump into any of the substance over here. And I want to spend maybe the next 20 minutes to talk about what is Kabbalah. And I want to put these few questions up over here, which is what I want to try to address right now, at least briefly. Number one, what is Kabbalah? Just give me a working definition. Number two, what are the central teachings of Kabbalah? What is the subject matter of Kabbalah? Number three, what is the significance of some of its key terms like Sefirot? So I'm sure we have all different types of levels of knowledge here. Maybe some of you know nothing about Kabbalah, which is totally fine. You're in the right place. No pre-knowledge is necessary over here. Maybe some of you know some of its terms, have dabbled. If you've been to some of our class before, maybe you're familiar with some of these terms. What do these words which appear, which are Kabbalistic terms, what are they all about? And I think this is the most critical question, how are these teachings relevant to my everyday life? Are we just here to learn about some random, abstract, theoretical ideas? Or are we here to touch our hearts, touch our souls, and become better people? So let us do a little bit of an overview of what is Kabbalah. So dear friends, it all starts like this. Some 3,300 years ago, the Jewish people stood at Mount Sinai, a mountain in the Sinai desert, and God gave the Torah to the Jewish people. God gave it to Moses. Moses taught it to the Jews. Of course, we got the 5 books of Moses, and we also got the entire oral tradition. The laws, the teachings, the philosophy, the ideas, the values. And one of the genres of the teachings of the Torah is called Kabbalah. Or another word that is used for it is called Sod. Sod in Hebrew means a secret. Secrets. What does the word Kabbalah mean in English, by the way? Received. Teachings that we received, which means the first thing we'll know about Kabbalah is these are spiritual teachings, which the only validity of these teachings are simply that we receive them. This is what was taught from Moses and passed down. Originally, it was only taught in a more limited fashion, but this is the teachings of Kabbalah, which means you can't make this stuff up. One of the things, no one asked me this morning, but I was like waiting for somebody to ask me. How do you know this is true? What's the answer? It's Kabbalah. We're taking Moses' word on it. Nothing more, nothing less. This is the Kabbalah, the way it's passed down through the generations by the great teachers and the masters of this tradition. And that's what it is. What is it? What is the general idea of Kabbalah? Let's read our first text. Text 2, on page 7. This is our first Safavian text from Rabbi Moshe Alshich, who's lived in Tzfat, buried in Tzfat. Okay, let us start on my right. The way we do it in this class, for those of you who are new here, first of all, welcome, welcome. This is wonderful. We're so happy to have, especially all the new faces. The way we do it in these classes are, whenever we have text, we go around, give everybody a chance to read. But if you don't want to read, no problem at all. Just pass the honor down. Keep on moving it down. So Debbie, let's begin text 2 on page 7. Here we go in our books.
God fashioned a ladder planted on the earth whose top reaches into the heavens. This ladder's rungs serve as channels through which the flow of divine energy can devolve degree after degree in a constant pattern of progressive coarsening until the flow can be received at the lowest extreme of existence.
Here we have our first idea. What is Kabbalah? Very simple. Actually, not that simple, but this is going to be the basic working definition. We all know we live in a world. We all know God created the world. But what is that process between God and his desire to create a world and our world? How did that creation happen? What is its, not only the creation historically, what is the process right now? God's interaction with the world, the relationship between God and the world, the existence of the world vis-a-vis God's existence. This is what Kabbalah is here to explain to us. The spiritual mechanics, the spiritual workings of our world. So we all know what our physical world looks like. But there's a spiritual force that is really powering the entire universe that we know of. And Kabbalah is here to share that with us. Now, why does Kabbalah want us to know these teachings? It gives us a deeper awareness of God. It helps us understand what our connection with God is. It deepens our appreciation of spiritual reality. It lifts us up a little bit. And more. But this is the basic idea. What Kabbalah teaches us is that there is a very a tight system to creation, to reality. Which means it's not just God created a world and now there's a world. There's a system in place which becomes the very operating system of our world. And this is what we just read in this text. There's a system, there's a ladder. The flow of divine energy devolves degree after degree, flowing from above to below. And, dear friends, I want to share with you our first Kabbalistic term. So in this course, one of the unique things we'll be doing is, in every lesson, I'm going to be introducing you to new terms of Kabbalah. And in your map, where's my map? In your map, it's also on the back side of your map, what every single lesson with the key terms are. Let us begin. On page 7, we'll have our first term for today. The Hebrew is called Seder Hishtalshelut, which means a system of devolution. The many degrees of systematic descent that stretch between God's desire to create the universe and the tangible result of that goal. This is the basic idea of what is Kabbalah. What is Kabbalah? The sophisticated exploration of the order of devolution. Now, what does devolution mean? It's the opposite of evolution. Evolution means things are progressing. Devolution means things are regressing, are being diminished and lowered. And any form of divinity ending up in our wonderful looking world is a devolution. Like, you know the story? There's once a guy, it's like a shtetl story. There's a Jew, he needed a pair of pants. He goes to the tailor, he says, do me a favor, I have a wedding in 3 weeks, I got to travel to Krakow. Maybe make me a fresh pair of pants. So he measures him up. He says, I need it in 3 weeks. 3 weeks. This tailor was a real procrastinator. The 3 weeks came, it passes, there's no pants. In any case, he comes back from the wedding and the tailor right away tells him, I got your pants ready. So he goes to pick it up. And he can't walk out without dropping a comment, you know. So he says, you know, it took God only 6 days to make the whole world. Making me wait over here 4 or 5 weeks for a pair of pants. But he says, but look at this pair of pants. And look at the world. All right. So it's a devolution. Okay. So this is the first term, the Seder Hishtalshelut. So Kabbalah is here to teach us this. Now, one of the things that we're doing here in this course is we got a beautiful map over here, which right now probably looks like Chinese to you, no? Don't worry. That's why we're all here. It's not going to be Chinese in a few minutes or in a few weeks. We'll figure that out. Okay. But it's interesting that in Kabbalah, if you turn to page 4 and 5 in your books, we have over here, and I'll put it up here on the screen as well, Kabbalah does this, not like very often, but this is part of the Kabbalistic style to give diagrams or schematics, which give a little bit of an understanding of the form, of the flow, of the structure of reality. This is from the Ramak, Rabbi Moshe Cordovero, from his book. This is the famous map of the Sefirot. Now, these are 500-year-old books, 500-year-old texts, books part of the traditional Jewish library. This is from the Shefa Tal, Rabbi Shabtai Sheftel Halevi Horowitz. This is another text from Tzfat. Fun fact, the Ramak's brother-in-law, whose name was, I'm forgetting right now, is the author of the Lichadodi that we pray and sing on Friday night. That is a Kabbalistic text. So he was from Tzfat, Okay, so we have this idea of the diagrams, and these diagrams are part of helping teach us a system, a hierarchy. And this is very much at the center of Kabbalah, and this is what we're going to be doing in this class, in this course. We're going to be studying the map, the system of Kabbalah, and as you'll see, this map, there's a lot going on over here, but it shows you this is lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3, lesson 4, lesson 5. Lesson 6 is not on the map. We'll get to that in lesson 6. All right. Okay, but it goes even deeper.
Oh, shoot.
But it goes even deeper.
God.
Okay. We're not just learning here about abstract spiritual reality. The Torah says in the creation of the first human being, Adam, that he was created in the image of the divine. Created in the divine image. B'Tselem Elokim. Now what does that mean, that we, the human being, was created in the image of God? What does that mean? Let's read this text over here. Text 1 on page 6. This is a critical text here. Stuart, let's do this. Text 1.
The mortal mirror. A mortal is a mirror for the supernal reality. All that exists in both higher and lower realms is present in microcosmic form within the human. This is the deeper significance of the Torah's statement that the human was created, quote, in the divine image, end quote. And this is why we say, quote, from my flesh I envisioned God, end quote.
This is an unbelievable text over here. When we study Kabbalah, and Kabbalah is teaching us about this whole divine system, a whole ecosystem, a whole hierarchy of realities, we are a miniature version of that. We're not learning about stuff out there. Everything that, all these spiritual realities and layers and levels and procedures, they're all built into our human psyche. We are a perfect miniature model. I wouldn't say perfect, a very, very devolved, mortal model of the divine system. And you see that here on the left side of your, which way, I think so. When you're holding it, it's your right hand, and it's the left side of the actual paper. So I don't know why right now my brain is having a hard time wrapping its head around that. Okay, so here on the right side of your paper, we have the mirror of the order of devolution, the Seder Hishlashlut, in the divine image, your soul. Which means we are the best analogy for understanding God's divine system. When we are learning abstract divine ideas, sometimes we ourselves are the way that we can understand better. Understanding our own psyche is actually the model. It helps us understand God. Like the verse in Job, from my flesh I envision God. From my flesh I can perceive God. But what it also means is that when you learn Kabbalah and you're learning these deep spiritual ideas that are up there, spiritual concepts, spiritual realities, spiritual systems that are larger than life, they all teach us about ourselves. And this is going to be a key idea of this course. We are not just here to learn theory, to learn big ideas about some stuff out there. Everything is going to come back to ourselves. And what we're going to be doing in this course, half of every single class, is going to be focused on the Kabbalistic concept, which is on the left side of the page. And then we're going to be applying that and showing how all that is true in ourselves, in our soul, in the divine image. And this teaches us how to be better people, how we can learn more about ourselves. And this is really what it's all about, that our learning is going to inspire us practically in our own lives. And this is the big idea. This teaches us the goal of learning Kabbalah and the goal of doing this course. Jewish mysticism is not for spiritual enlightenment as an end unto itself. We're not just here to have a good time, learn about deep spiritual ideas because it tickles our brain cells, and we get to learn these big ideas. That's not what Jewish mysticism is about. The whole goal is for it to change us, to shift our perspective, empower our growth. That this should be a course that, God willing, won't just be spiritual and abstract and theory, but it will be deeply meaningful. And in every single class we're going to see that. By learning the Kabbalah, we're learning more about ourselves. And that's the whole goal. It has to change us. It has to make us into a better Jew, into a better human being, and to be simply better functioning because we're understanding ourselves. Okay. But that said, all that said, there's a word of caution. There's a word of caution. The word of caution is this. Let's read text 3 on page 8. Jim, take it away.
The saintly Rabbi Israel Baal Shem Tov taught that when studying the works of Kabbalah, we must be careful not to perceive the Kabbalistic ideas as literal physical concepts.
Oh. We are not learning about physical reality. We're learning about spiritual reality. And spiritual reality is a reality that is beyond the 5 senses. And we humans tend to think if it's real, it's got to be something tangible. It's got to be something, material. So there's a risk here that when you're learning deep spiritual ideas about God, the risk is you're going to misunderstand what you're learning, give it a very materialistic form, and to the point that all of a sudden you're even ending up with the wrong ideas. And that was why throughout the generations, the teachings of Kabbalah was done with a lot of care. These are very sensitive teachings. Not everybody's mind and heart is refined enough and ready to study these things. The teacher has to be careful. It's more of a responsibility on the teacher than the student. So this is the idea. We have to be very careful. Don't think literally. We gotta avoid being an Amelia Bedelia when we're studying Kabbalah. What does Amelia Bedelia do? Take everything and what's your favorite Amelia Bedelia? Like strip the linen. So what does she do? She takes a scissor and strips all the linen. What else? Right? What else? I'm trying to remember my
Draw
child.
the drapes.
What was that? Oh, draw the drapes. Yeah. So she draws the drapes. So the how of Kabbalah, we have to understand how we learn. All these spiritual ideas, the whole concept of Seder Hishtalshalut, this is not material. This is not physical reality. And it's actually interesting, in the picture that we had earlier in the book, he writes over here, in this book called Shef Hatal, he writes here that I'm only making a schematic, a diagram, that these are spiritual ideas that are not describable in a diagram. So I'm making a physical, material, practical diagram. It's like that you could then, get from there, you can understand what the spiritual reality is. But don't think that this diagram is actually giving you a physical picture of what it looks like. These are spiritual ideas. I'll give you an example. What's an example of this idea that you have to come with nuance and a little bit of a deeper understanding, and don't make it material? We're learning about the idea that there's different levels of reality. There's something in Kabbalah called spiritual worlds. We believe in spiritual reality. There's higher worlds and lower worlds. So when somebody hears there's a world which is higher than our world, you could think, you know what? Maybe Elon Musk is going to make a spaceship. If you go double the length past Mars, then you maybe reach a spiritual world. No, a higher world is not, we're not talking spatially. We're not talking about altitude. It's spiritual. It's beyond our physical universe. Anything in our physical universe is going to be part of the physical universe. So what do we mean when we say higher and lower? We mean it conceptually, which means there's a quality that makes this reality, this realm of reality, higher in rank, in quality. It's like saying that second grade is a higher grade than first grade. It doesn't mean that second grade is going to be on the second floor of the building. We mean conceptually. When somebody is higher in rank in the office, right, again, it means a conceptual higher. It's the same thing over here. All these ideas, we need to learn about it properly. We have to have a proper appreciation that this is spiritual reality we're talking about. And that said, another word of caution is that when we learn deep ideas, you have to be willing to accept to not understand it right away. Meaning. Usually we learn something, and if we don't understand it, we say we just give up. Obviously it's not meant for me. No. When we're learning spiritual ideas, it takes a lot of time to get our minds and our hearts to be able to start wrapping our heads around it. It just simply takes time. It's not, you know, 1 + 1 = 2. I got it, okay. So going through the struggle of hearing something and saying, okay, I hear it. I don't fully get it yet. That's not a bug, that's a feature. That's part of how we study. So when we study deeper ideas, and these are ideas, the way they're explained in the teachings of Hasidic philosophy, that's really where this whole course is here. The way these concepts are explained and made approachable through the teachings of Hasidus, and the way they're made relevant in Hasidus. We have to be ready to sit through it and say, you know what, I'm learning deep ideas, and it's going to take my brain a little bit of time to like, you know, be able to assimilate these ideas. So if you hear something that's a little bit over your head, don't worry about it. It's really a part of it, and that's also how I study. Sometimes I learn something and it's a little bit beyond me, whatever. You don't give up, you just keep on learning. And you see, the more you study, the more it starts making sense. The more it's being more ingrained. And that is how we do it. So dear friends, we did the what of Kabbalah, the way that it's the divine system. It's also our human soul. This is the story of us. And I want to just summarize with the 3 big goals of today's class, of the course. What are we hoping to get out of this, and why is it so important? Number 1, we're learning about God and His ways. It's a mitzvah to know God. It's a mitzvah. One of the 613 commandments is to know God. There's a mitzvah to have a relationship with God. You can't know God, you can't have a relationship with God if you don't study God. And Kabbalah is the source material that teaches us about God, teaches us about His ways, and gives us a sense of connection and a sense of relationship with God. And this is number 1, first and foremost, a mitzvah. Number 2, by joining this course, we're going to have a whole new understanding of the world around us. When you understand the operating system behind anything, you get it better. Oh, now I understand why it works this way. Now I understand how to navigate the system because I understand how it works from the inside out. So when we learn Kabbalah, we're learning about all of reality. We understand how reality ticks, what makes it tick. It helps us understand and navigate the world that we live in. And finally, and this is most important, the goal is to help us understand ourselves, to help us grow and to become more spiritually in tune. And that's really what we're doing here. There's a Hasidic story I'll share with you. It's a very deep story. It's a story with the 4th Chabad Rebbe. His name was the Rebbe Maharash, Rabbi Shmuel of Lubavitch. And in the teachings of Hasidus, in the Hasidic community, this idea of studying about God, studying spiritual ideas, what we'll call Kabbalah ideas, Kabbalistic ideas, this is a very important thing, to study them, to meditate on them, and to lift yourself up. To lift yourself up, become a more spiritual person, become more in tune with God. And there was a chassid, one of the followers of the Rebbe Maharash, one of the followers of Rabbi Shmuel, and he had a private audience with the Rebbe. And the Rebbe says, I want to hear, what do you do in the morning? He says, in the morning I wake up, before I pray, I spend an hour and I study Hasidus, I study these deep ideas about God. What do you do after you pray, before you go to work? He says, I sit down again, and I study again for another hour Hasidus. Unbelievable. Lunch break, he takes out a book, he's studying Hasidus. He comes home at night, puts the kids to bed, he studies for an hour before saying the evening Shema. This is beautiful. The Rebbe says, you know, you think so much about God, and when do you think about yourself? The chassid was shocked. What do you mean? What's wrong? It's a deep story. Why? The Rebbe wasn't saying, you know, when do you think about yourself? You know, when was the last time you took a good shower? When was the last time you, went to an amusement park and took yourself out to have a good time? That's not what he meant. What he meant was, you're so focused on studying deep ideas out there, are you making sure to apply these ideas to your life? Are you becoming a changed person? Or is it always remaining an abstract study? And we got to make sure we're not here to just have a good time studying deep ideas. And we're all here to bring it inward. The more we learn about what's going on up there, the more it affects us down here. That's the goal. Like, you know the story? Anybody here a professor? Any professors here? All right, so I'm not offending anybody. Okay. There was once a professor of ethics in a university. And lo and behold, he was caught doing something a little bit unethical. So the board of the university called him in and they said, we would understand if another professor did this. But you're the professor of ethics and you're doing this? So professors, I don't understand. Is the professor of math a square? I teach ethics. I am ethics. So that's not Jewish. Jewish is we learn about God, we become more godly. So dear friends, with all those introductions, it is time to jump in. Let us begin our first topic for today. Let's make the plunge. We'll start studying the teachings of Kabbalah. We're starting from the very bottom of our map. Now, by the way, I don't expect me to see all the wording here from this far, but you have the map in your own books. And when I point here, I'm just giving you a little bit of a visual guide so that you know where we're holding. And what we're going to be doing is, in today's class, we're starting at the very bottom. We all know that we live in a physical world. That we don't need to learn about. But once we make our way up, there's something called spiritual worlds. And that's what we're going to be learning about today. I want to teach you the terms. There's the world of Asiya. The spiritual world of Asiya. The spiritual realm of reality called Asiya. Then there's the world called Yetzirah. And then there's the world of Beriah. All right, we'll learn about just, I'm introducing you to the terms. Let's read the next text from the classic book of Jewish mysticism, the Zohar. Lewis is up. Lewis, text 4, let's read. Page 9. Yeah.
Page 9, yep. God's glory includes Beriah, and God bestowed this unto the human. God's glory includes Yetzirah, and God bestowed this unto the human. God's glory includes Asiya, and God bestowed this unto the human. Thus the human is rendered in the image of the supernal glory.
Here we're being introduced to these three concepts. There's the world of Asiya, there's the world of Yetzirah, there's the world of Beriah. And God bestowed those three realms also into the human being. As we've learned, we are the microcosmic mirror image of the divine system. We all have these three levels. Now, it's interesting, the Zohar finds a hint to these three realms of reality, the world of Beriah, of Yetzirah, and Asiya, because if you look in the Torah, in the creation narrative, at the very beginning of the Torah, right in the beginning, the Lord created the heavens and the earth, Bereshit bara, you'll see over there different terms being used for creation. You have Bereshit bara. Bara means created. You have the word yatzar. That's a different synonym. And then you have the word asa, like la'asot. We have it in Kiddush every Friday. Yom hashishi, vayechulu hashmayim v'aretz v'chol tzavam, vayechal l'kim yom shvim lachto asher asa. God finished the work that He started, that He made. So there's three different terms used in the creation narrative. And Kabbalah says, here it is hinted to in the biblical narrative, that there are three spiritual realities that were created. Beriah, Yetzirah, and Asiya. And in the human being, these are reflected. The way these three worlds are in us is thought, speech, and action. Okay. Now, just for a little bit of a Kabbalah key term before we start explaining what these worlds are, turn to page 10. In Kabbalah language, we make a easy little acronym to refer to this system of three worlds. And on page 10, you see it's called Biyah. B-Y-A, Bet Yud Ayin. The first letter of each of the three worlds, Biyah, Beriah, Yetzirah, and Asiya. Okay. What are these spiritual worlds? Why do they exist? What's the significance of three spiritual worlds? And I actually want to point out to you, you'll see there's a spiritual world of Beriah, there's a spiritual world of Yetzirah, and then Asiya has the spiritual world and the physical Asiya, which means we all know the world that we live in. We live in the world of Asiya. All right? Welcome to planet Earth. But the world that we live in has a spiritual part to it as well, which is the spiritual world of Asiya. Okay, and the other worlds don't have any physical parts. That's fully spiritual. So what are these worlds? What are they all about? Let's study what these worlds are about. We really have to ask a more important question. What did God have to do to create the world? That's like a real Kabbalah question, right? What did God have to do? So God wants to make a world. So what do you got to do now? How do you make a world? Right? Creation for dummies. How do you do that?
Imagine it,
Imagine it? Right, but it has to be real, no?
and then create it.
And then create it. First plan it and then make it. So first of all, we of course know God had to make everything, every single atom, every single particle, all the materials of our world God had to create. And then we have a world. But Kabbalah says, fundamentally, there's another very important part to creation, which is like this. I want you to follow along with this. Before God makes a world, what is there in existence? Only God. The problem is that when you have God's existence, there's no space for any other existence. The first thing that God had to create was make a space where the possibility of a sense of existence is possible, of independency, a sense of consciousness. We are all very conscious of our existence. We all feel in every single fiber of our being that we exist. I am. And we take ourselves very seriously. It's part of our psyche. A baby is born like that. A baby is born and knows that they exist and that they matter, meaning they matter to themselves. They're not fake, they're not an illusion. They have a full sense of consciousness. And that was the first thing God had to create. The possibility of another existence. The idea that I look at you and you are something, but you are different than me. And I don't feel that my existence is overwhelmed by God's existence. In order for that to happen, that was the first process of creation. For God to create space for independent existence that has its own self-concept.
Just space, period, because God doesn't exist.
Even before, right, but even before space, even before physical space, even an angel doesn't live in physical space, but an angel is in existence. It feels itself. I am something. So there's God and there's me. And there's me and there's you. And even a bumblebee has a sense of existence, a sense of self-concept. He knows that he is. That was the first thing. This concept called a self-concept, a sense of existence. I want to teach you the Hebrew term. Look on page 10. It's called, this is key term number 3, it's called yeshut, a sense of existence. Existence with a sense of self-awareness and independence. This was the first thing God had to create. The possibility, a conceptual space where there could be something that feels like it is. I want to learn about that in a moment, what this is. I'll explain to you a little bit more. But the Hebrew term is yeshut, like in Hebrew, modern Hebrew as well. We have the word yesh. What does the word yesh mean?
Here.
It is. There is. Word yesh, it is. Something is. Isness. That's yeshut. A sense of ego, a sense of being. And the development of yeshut, of existence, was in a 3-step process. 3 different worlds. Each world created the possibility of independent existence, more of a possibility. Which is interesting. Kabbalah says this, that we see in the world that a lot of creations are in a 3-step process. And on the most basic level, biologically, the creation of a child happens in 3 steps. Number 1, you have the embryo. The embryo is the very beginning of a thing. But how much of a thing is it? It doesn't have a shape, it doesn't have an identity, it doesn't have really any functionality yet. Oh, puppy. It's the beginning of a something. The beginning of yeshut begins in the embryo. And then it develops into a fetus, which is where it starts becoming shaped. It starts getting form. Very rough draft, very loose, no detail, but it's starting to take shape. This yeshut, this existence is starting to be shaped. And number 3 is when, at the end of the pregnancy, we have a full, physical, mature baby ready to be born with hair, with nails, all the details are filled in. It's fully completed, fully formed. 3-step process. And this is a parallel for the 3 steps. In Berea, the very beginning of the possibility of creation, of existence begins. It doesn't have much shape, it doesn't have much dimension to it. It's just the beginning of the possibility. Yetzirah, Yeshut, existence, a sense of independence, starts becoming more acute. And number 3, in the world of Asiya, existence is fully ready. And as we all know, we are all, thank God, all very healthy, functioning pieces of Yeshut. We all got lots of Yeshut inside of us, which simply means a sense of being. We don't walk around with a compromised sense of being. You know, am I really here or am I not here? Am I just an illusion or not? Am I just a shadow? Am I just a simulation? Am I real or not? If you don't ask that question, it's because you've got a very good, healthy Yeshut. You've got Yeshut. Right? You've got mail? We've all got Yeshut because we are the inhabitants of the final world where Yeshut is fully developed and we all have a great sense of self. So it's a gradual process. 1, 2, 3. What exactly causes the possibility of Yeshut to slowly be developed? What changes between one world to the next world that allows a sense of independence to emerge? And not just human independence, but even an angel. An angel feels like it's a thing. It feels a lot more connected with God than we do, but even a very high angel. Souls in the higher world. By the way, where do our souls come from? They come from the higher worlds. Where do our souls go to? They go to the higher worlds. Where do angels live? What's the sphere of angels? They live in these spiritual worlds. They also sense themselves like a sense of being, but not as much as we do, because we're at the lowest level. So what makes one level more of a Yeshut? The higher world, less of a Yeshut. It's all about how much they perceive God's existence. Let me give you an analogy. And we'll learn about that in the story of ourselves, and the story of our children. There's 3 steps in the process of individuation. Individuation means sensing that you're an individual. There's a baby, there's a child, and there's a teenager. A baby, on the one hand, is an independent being. The baby is not the mother. The baby is not the father. But at the same time, how much of a sense of self-concept, of independence, of self-awareness, of individuality does the baby have? Really nothing. Why is that? Because the parents literally hover over the baby and just don't give the baby any space, physically or conceptually, to be its own thing. We feed you, we take you, we decide what we're going to do. Just, we are you. You are us. You have no self-identity other than the identity of your parents. You are overwhelmed by the existence of your parents. So that's how just a baby feels. That's what I am. I'm nothing other than part of this family. A child, the parents slowly start pulling away. That's healthy parenting. We give more space. And giving more space allows the child to develop their own sense of self. What are my hobbies? What do I like doing? What do I like eating? What friends do I like? What study do I? So a child is still very, very much in the shadow of their parents. Parents take care of them. The parents pay for all their needs. And the child has no worries. The parents are still very much there, but the parents are pulling away, and a sense of individuality for the child is allowed to start emerging. And then we have the teenager.
Devolution.
A devolution, you say. And either by choice or by force, the parents pull back even more. And what happens then? Now this teenager could start finding themselves, which is what happens. Why do children rebel? It's part of the process of finding themselves. And the first part of finding yourself is what? Is affirming to yourself that I'm not my parents. So a young child, my father is the greatest male to ever live. For sure in the past 500 years. My mom, best mom. What do the teenagers say? Yeah, old school, old style, annoying. What else?
Embarrassing.
Get lost. Just simply get lost. The teenager is really starting to find their own self. They're not being overwhelmed by the existence of their parents, that their existence is becoming subdued and stunted. But now they are finding themselves. Who am I? How does my brain think? What are my desires? That is the process. God does the exact same thing in this process of these three worlds. Let us read text 5. Lance, roll them by you. Text 5 on page 12.
There are three rungs, Beriah, Yetzirah, and Asiya. Beriah is the first introduction of Yeshut, an independent self-concept. However, existence only develops into a complete Yesh when it reaches the third stage. The reason Yeshut develops gradually is because the initial stage of existence remains close to God, and His presence is very much sensed at this level. Then Beriah devolves into Yetzirah, where the presence of God is somewhat concealed. Finally, Yetzirah devolves into Asiya, where God is completely concealed. At this point, existence becomes a true Yesh and gains a complete sense of selfhood.
Beautiful. There you go. The world of Beriah, there are souls in the world of Beriah. There are angels in the world of Beriah. And they are a thing. You know what the only problem is? In the world of Beriah, you sense the reality of God very acutely. It's very overwhelming. And when you put your existence in relation to God's existence, you know what happens to your existence? It starts becoming a little bit not so real. I am, but not that much. And you become very overwhelmed by God's existence. And the souls and the angels in the world of Beriah are totally overwhelmed by God's existence. So they do exist, but their sense of independence, their sense of being is very, very strongly stunted. Instead, they're focused on God's existence. That's what overwhelms them. That's what captivates them. It's like, imagine if Elmo had a consciousness. I'm Elmo, which is what we all thought at one point of time, right? Imagine one day Elmo realizes that he's just at somebody else's hand. You're a piece of fabric. And your voice, your personality, everything is just somebody else's hands. What would that do to Elmo? What would Elmo start thinking? It just changes a lot, no? So in the world of Beriah, the awareness of God is very overwhelming. In the world of Beriah, God is a reality, is the reality. You felt cold today? Isn't it wonderful? We're already deep into the winter frost, no? Deep in the winter of November 1st, 2023. Okay. So you felt cold today? In the world of Beriah, you sense God. You wake up in the morning, it's there. You feel it inside of you in the world. That's the world. And your sense of being is much less. In the world of Yetzirah, God pulls back a bit more. And the sense of existence, of being, could be felt a lot more. Yeshut becomes a lot stronger in the world of Yetzirah. Because God hides His presence. And then, when you get to the world of Asiya, God completely hides His presence. In the world of Asiya, you don't sense God. And what do you sense? You sense yourself. Now your just inner sense of being, I am, a self-concept, a consciousness, a sense of independence. That could happen completely and properly when the natural sense of God totally eludes you. Which is, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our world. Right? That's the world we live in. We don't wake up in the morning and feel God in creation. We don't feel God pulsing within us, giving us the power to live, the energy to live. We don't feel that. It's by design. It's not a bug, it's a feature. That's where God wants us to live. The default state of a human being, we live here in this world, in the physical Asiya, God is removed from you. So we have Beriah, Yetzirah, and Asiya. In the world of Asiya, God's existence is the most concealed. And therefore, the sense of Yeshut, the sense of being, is most revealed, shows up in full force. And then you have our world, the physical Asiya, which is not only you don't sense God, you don't even sense spirituality. You don't live anymore in a spiritual realm. These are the three worlds, and the basic definition of these worlds are, what is the ratio of Yeshut? How much Yeshut is there in each of these three worlds? And it all depends on how much of God is felt in that world. So, we already have over here the understanding of the human condition. Why is it that we don't know God? Why is it that we can only learn about God in books? And God will always remain an abstraction. Well, it's because God decided this is what He wants us as souls and bodies to look like. That we should live here in the physical Asiya where God completely conceals His presence. It's like that we could emerge as full, complete, robust pieces of Yeshut with a sense of being. But at the same time, our souls come from these spiritual worlds. Maybe you have a very high level soul, and your soul comes from Beriah or Yetzirah or even Asiya, the spiritual Asiya. The more that we could develop a sense of God in our lives, in our world, that is us lifting ourselves up and journeying upwards and becoming more spiritual people. This is how it works. We begin with our feet on the ground in Asiya. In the Asiya reality, God feels distant from us. We're not born knowing God. And even when we learn about God, it's always going to be something else. It's an abstraction. But then, sometimes, maybe by learning about God, meditating on God, and bringing the presence of God into our lives, we can start sensing God's presence. And when we do that, we are developing the Yetzirah. We are lifting ourselves up. We're now becoming a little bit more spiritual. Now we are living a little bit in the Yetzirah reality. Right? Yetzirah is not somewhere up there. We could live in that reality. And maybe even sometimes, maybe when we really study, we get into a special zone, maybe it's the high holidays, we could be overwhelmed by God's presence, and that's the Bria reality. And these are the three worlds. That is the Kabbalistic concept. Okay, dear friends, let's watch a video now. This was deep, right? How are we doing so far? How are we doing? This is deep. Let's all take a deep breath. We did it. This is the primer for Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiya, the three spiritual worlds. We'll now watch a video. The video is going to summarize and go through what we just studied. It will be a good review, maybe some new stuff there. It'll be a little bit of a relaxer. In 5 minutes, we'll move on to the next part of today's class. So here we go.
What is the Kabbalah? It's Judaism's mystical wisdom. It discusses souls, the deeper meaning of things, and the spiritual system of the heavens. Never heard of this heavenly system? That's okay. Why don't we do what Kabbalah does best? Offer a parable to explain something abstract. You decide to build a home. Your plan actually begins with an intuition of pleasure. Deep within your subconscious, you sense the enormous pleasure of dwelling in a home that truly suits you. That spark of pleasure that invades your brain's desire center. I want a home, you tell yourself. Immediately, your intellect grabs the wheel. You logically justify your desire and analyze the possibilities. Your emotions chime in. How do I feel about this location? Am I comfortable with high windows? You carefully rethink your plan, you discuss it with friends, and are finally ready for action. Sign, build, move. What's all that got to do with heaven? The Kabbalah reveals that when God decided to create the physical world, God first created an entire spiritual system that parallels the experience we've just described. In this first video, we'll take a quick look at the final 3 stages of this system. In each subsequent video, we will climb one level higher as we explore this supernal chain of command. The mystical work titled the Zohar discusses the existence of 3 spiritual worlds that precede our own. Their names are Beriah, Yetzirah, and Asiya. These worlds are inhabited by angels and souls before they descend to earth, and those who have passed away and flourish in the afterlife. In Hebrew, the word Beriah means to create something from nothing at all. So in the spiritual world of Beriah, for the first time in the entire system, things exist that are aware of their own existence. They feel independent, outside of God. That's amazing, because nothing is independent of God. But in Beriah, God hides His presence to enable entities to emerge with a sense of self. Nevertheless, the angels and souls that inhabit Beriah feel tremendously close to God and are completely focused on God. Everything here is fragile, extremely close to losing its identity and being blissfully overwhelmed by proximity to God. So, God took it one step further and created the spiritual world of Yetzirah, which means to give shape to something. This is where the sense of independence from God truly begins to take shape. Here, God hides His presence to a far greater degree, which allows the spiritual inhabitants of Yetzirah to develop greater self-awareness. That said, God is still sensed in the spiritual place. And so, God made Asiya, which in Hebrew implies a complete and final product. From its perspective, the sense of independence from God is complete. Asiya has 2 linked layers. Its top layer consists of spiritual beings, and in its lower layer is our physical universe, the tangible, material world we know so well, where we struggle to relate to the divine force that continuously creates us. The good news? Even as we reside in the physical Asiya, our souls keep a connection with those higher worlds from which they emanate. The spiritual Asiya helps us peer beyond the physical. Yetzirah empowers us to suspend our self-focus long enough to sense God's presence. And Beriah helps us feel blissfully overwhelmed by God's presence, at least momentarily, such as in a moment of meditative prayer. So, we walk planet Earth, but at the same time, we can be firmly rooted in the bliss of spiritual loftiness.
How was that? That was good? A good review? Okay. And now we got to bring it down to us. That's the next step over here. So in creation there is Beriah, Yetzirah, and Asiya, which is where the sense of separation, of independence from God starts happening. And what is that in the divine image, in the human soul? That corresponds to our thought, our speech, and our action. Which means dear friends, there is our soul, the core of our soul, and then we have three outer layers which are already removed from our soul. Just like Berea, Yetzirah, and Asiya are three layers removed from God's core, or at least they feel that way. And each one is more removed. The same thing is true about our thought, speech, and action. Each one is removed, and each one is more removed than the other one. Okay, but I got to demonstrate this to you for a second. So let's do a little exercise. You ready for a little bit of fun over here? Okay, do you have a pen? For those of you who have a pen, you ready? I want you to write something down here, okay? And I want to hear from you if you're capable of writing this down. Maybe you won't be capable. I want you to try to write this down. Ready? Please write down 2 + 2 = 5. I love moldy tofu. Please write that down. Oh, you can write it on your phone too. That works. Okay, were you successfully able to write this down?
Yes.
Yes. Now, I want you to all say this with me. Let's say it all together. Ready? 2 + 2 = 5. I love moldy tofu. That works. So we could write it and we could say it. Now, I want you to think it. Think it in your head. 2 + 2 = 5. I love moldy tofu. Were you able to think it? Okay. Now, I want you to please understand that 2 + 2 = 5, and I want you to feel that you love moldy tofu. Could you do this? Can't do it. You could think 2 + 2. You see,
I see 5.
the world convinced us to like moldy cheese. Maybe they could get us into moldy tofu. So our big food creator here.
Stinky tofu is a thing.
Are you serious?
Yes.
So this is a bad analogy then. Okay.
But nobody likes stinky tofu, okay?
Not in the West.
Nobody.
Not nobody, nobody's sitting in this room.
No.
Okay. All right, so there maybe is some form of life out there that does like moldy tofu. Not us and here right now. Okay, in any case. So it's very interesting. We were able to write it down, which is an action. We were able to say it, speech. We were even able to think it. But you can't understand 2 + 2 = 5. Why not? Because we have a mind, and the mind just simply disagrees. It just doesn't see things that way. And we have emotions, the way we feel. And no, I'm sorry, you'll never get me to feel that I love moldy tofu. You can't even get me to feel to tolerate moldy tofu. Now, what does this show us? There's who we are. There's our soul. And our soul, 2 + 2 = 5 is not true. To our soul, we don't love moldy tofu. But thought, speech, and action are removed from the essence of the soul. They're removed from the core of the soul, which is why you are able to think things and say things and do things that are not at all aligned with where your soul is. And that is why, look at page 14. These 3 behaviors, these are the behaviors of the soul. The soul uses these 3 forms of behaviors to behave, to interact with the world. We think, we speak, we do. But these are called, in page 14, in Kabbalah language, in Hasidus language, they're called the soul's garments. Levushei hanefesh. They're only the garments of the soul. Why? Because garments sit outside of us. I could get dressed like a policeman, no problem. Doesn't mean I am, right? They are on a level removed from us. And this corresponds to the 3 worlds of Berea, Yetzirah, and Asiya. Realities within us that we possess them, but they stand a little bit removed from our core. Just like in God's creation, there are 3 worlds that God created to exist with a sense of being outside of Him. So let's put that here on the screen. We have the soul itself, the intellect of the soul, the emotions of the soul, and then we have the behaviors, the garments of the soul, thought, speech, and action. And there's a big disconnect. This is the core of the soul, and that's you. You can't change who you are. You can't change the way your mind thinks. You can't change the way your heart feels. Oh, but your garments, your behaviors, are on the outer layer. They're garments. They're not the skin itself. So here's the idea. Let's recap. Number one, what we've seen so far is that thought, speech, and action can operate in ways that contradict your soul. Your soul does not agree 2 + 2 = 5, but your garments could 100% engage in that type of activity. You could write it, you could say it, you could think it. Number two, what we just saw is they're called levushim, garments of the soul, which means just like our garments, they hang outside of us. This too is on the outer layer of us, and they correspond to the 3 spiritual worlds of Bia. Let us read text 6b. Where are we holding? Shauna, we're by you?
Yeah.
Short and sweet text. 6b on page 16.
Bria corresponds to thinking, Yetzirah to speaking, and Asiya to the physical action.
There we have the parallel. This is the text. Now let's actually think about it. Bria has the beginning of a sense of independence from God, of yeshut, but it still senses God very strongly. That's like our thoughts. That's the world of our thoughts. Our thoughts, on the one hand, like we just demonstrated to ourselves, lie outside of ourselves. Because we could think 2 + 2 = 5. We could think that we love moldy tofu. But at the same time, the mind is very, very deeply plugged in to the soul's intellect and emotions. When our soul is feeling something, our thoughts could really capture that feeling. When our soul is thinking something, has an idea, our thoughts could really tap into that idea. So, thought captures the soul's feelings and the soul's energy very forcefully, and therefore, thought is parallel to the world of Bria, which is independent, but senses God's energy and existence very strongly. What about speech? Does speech capture the soul's force? Does our speech capture the soul's energy, the soul's emotions?
Sometimes.
For sure.
At times.
You could, if somebody's passionate, you could hear it in their speech. Right? You could say, wow, I sense a lot of soul. You're talking, I sense your soul. The emotion is felt in speech. But at the same time, speech does not capture the energy of the soul as much as thought. How often do we find ourselves saying, words aren't describing what I'm feeling? You could write a whole book. Nah, it's not really, I'm not able to really share what I'm going through right now in words. The words fail to capture what's happening. So there we're starting to see how there's more distance. Words, speech, captures the soul's feelings, but not as effectively as thought. Thought, when we feel something, could really sense that feeling in our thought. When we speak it, it's not there as much. There's more of a disconnect. It's more peripheral. There's more distance. And then we come to action. So speech is the world of Yetzirah, which is a lower world. Less of godliness felt in Yetzirah. And then we have action. Does action capture the energy of the soul?
Yeah.
Does action capture emotion?
Yeah.
You say yes.
Yeah.
Does action capture emotion? Does action capture the energy of the soul?
A hug, I think it's the result of the.
It's a result. Do you feel emotion in a hug?
Yeah.
Which means, I want to think about this critically with you. You give somebody a hug because you love them dearly and you're feeling the emotion of love, so you give them a tight, long hug. Here's my question for you. Are you able to set a robot to give a hug with the exact same level of pressure, at the exact same space, for the exact same duration of time? Yes or no? Or,
Yes.
oh, yes.
Yeah, but you don't have the feeling.
But the exact same hug, the
No.
exact same hug, which means when you hug somebody and they feel your love and you feel their love, you're not sensing it in the mechanical hug itself. You're sensing their emotion,
Right.
but not in the hug itself. The act itself is mechanical. An action is fully mechanical. It's a mechanical act that in fact does not capture the soul at all. The proof is in the pudding. You could get a robot which is totally emotionless to do anything that a human being does.
Speech too?
So, wait.
Speech, but not as much. We're living in 2023, almost 2024. Apple iPhones, nobody's going to say that Siri talks with soul. Right?
Oh, but I could.
Not even close. Have you ever had a passionate Siri? So they could talk, but at the end of the day, you sense the human. It's you're right, it's a hybrid. On the one hand, a speech is also a mechanical act. At the same time, it does capture, it does allow some of the energy of the soul to be manifest through it. Action, just like the world of Asiya, fully doesn't capture the soul. And also, actions happen outside of us. When we write something down, when we make something, we build something, that doesn't happen inside of us, that we're actually making something outside of us. So that's also where we see action is the third world, corresponding to Asiya, which is totally removed, totally outside of our existence. Yes, Richard?
So I get what you're saying, the action of the hug itself, so the physical action, but somewhere along the line, that action created a feeling, and then, right, of that.
So first you
hug.
have a feeling, and then you act upon that feeling.
So, but they're separate, you're just saying they're all separate. Even
Which what I'm saying is that in the act does not capture the soul.
I don't know.
Speech does capture some of the soul.
Yes, I get that.
Right? That's what I'm saying.
I think I'm getting it, I get it.
I told you, this is deep ideas.
It is, I
We
love
have
it.
to wow. Okay,
It's
we're
awesome.
now, dear friends, you can see this on page 17. Right? We have the self, and then we have three outer layers. The world of Bria is thought. The world of Yetzirah, which is even more distant from ourselves, and is less of ourselves, that's our speech. And then we have the world of Asiya, which corresponds to our action, which is, in a certain way, we're doing it, but totally removed from the energy of the soul. Dear friends, we have 15 minutes left. By learning Kabbalah, we've studied the Kabbalah of the three worlds. We've learned about how we are a micro image of that model. We are going to come out now with two very powerful and simple lessons. We just learned, based on the Kabbalistic model, that our thought, speech, and action reside outside of ourselves on some level. They're on the periphery of ourselves. And there's a disconnect between our self, our core, and the behaviors of thought, speech, and action. And what does this teach us? This teaches us something so simple, yet so profound, and so empowering. Dear friends, look at page 22. I want you to choose, don't write this down, this is very personal. Mentally find one of these character traits that, this is a negative that you could identify with, and then find one that you totally don't, that you don't struggle with this problem. Anger, arrogance, jealousy, frivolity, greediness, timidity. Just choose one which...
Just one, huh?
Okay, we're trying to be nice over here. Yeah, let's just take just one for right now. Take one. Take one that you know you struggle with this. Your soul, listen, we're not perfect, we're not God. Our soul has strengths and weaknesses. Some of us maybe suffer from thoughts of jealousy. My soul, it naturally gravitates to being jealous of other people. I feel it. Or be flakiness, being cynical, being dishonest, disloyal, disorganized. Lots of great options over here. Okay. Some people are aware of their negatives of their soul. What could I do? I'm greedy. What could I do? I suffer from jealousy. What could I do? Intrusiveness, insensitivity, whatever, what have you. And they say, what could I do? This is me. So if this is me, what should I do? This is who I am. Too bad on myself, too bad on the world, too bad on my family. This is me. Comes the world of Kabbalah. And it says, no, that is you. That is you. Yeah, right. That's you. that doesn't mean you have to act that way. What did we just learn? You could think totally contrary to your soul. You could speak totally contrary to your soul. You could act totally contrary to your soul. So Kabbalah comes and says, look, thought, speech, and action are removed from you. They don't have to fully reflect what's going on inside. If there's something unhealthy inside of you, don't let that be expressed in your actions, in your garments, in your thought, speech, and action. Just because you have a scar on your skin doesn't mean you have to also put a scar on your clothing. I put a rip in my, because I got a scar over here. What the business is that? Your garments could look good. So comes Kabbalah and says, don't let your problems define you. Don't let your problems define the way you behave in life. Such a simple, beautiful teaching that we learn by studying the system. Let's read text 7. Such a beautiful text. Where are we holding? Richard, text 7.
Thought, speech, and action are merely garments to the soul. Just as we are able to remove the body's garments, so can we remove the soul's garments of speech and action by refraining from speaking or acting. And just as we can exchange one article of clothing for another, so can we switch our thought, which constantly runs from one subject to another. This is in contrast to the intellect and emotion that, as part of the actual soul, demand much effort to effectively change.
So the fact that every single one of us suffer from problems inside, we all do. Everybody's got their problems. Everybody's got their weaknesses. But you know what being a mensch is? Being a mensch is not about being perfect on the inside. Being a mensch means being aware that just because you feel something doesn't mean you have to think that way. And just because you feel something doesn't mean you have to speak that way. And just because you feel something doesn't mean you have to act that way. It's a very simple but profound, empowering message. And look at this, text 8, such a powerful text. This is great over here. Yaakov, this is from the Shittim Mekubetzes over here. So this is good stuff over here. Text 8, Elki. Such a powerful, I love this text. Text 8 on page 25.
There was once a sage who sent a drawing of his face to a physiognomist.
One second, you're familiar with that word?
No.
How do you pronounce that? Physiognomist?
Physiognomist.
You make it sound easy.
Physiognomist.
Physiognomist, which is somebody who
She's more pronounced.
could look at somebody's face and could detect what's going on inside just by looking at their face. Anybody here know how to do that? Okay, good, thank God. All right, okay, Elke, go ahead.
A master who discerns temperament and character from one's outward appearance. When the master saw the drawing, he immediately blocked his face in fright. The messenger who brought the drawing asked him, "Why have you blocked your face from looking at the drawing?" The master replied, "I've never seen the face of such a horrible person before. I saw in him coveting, adultery, and robbery. One shouldn't gaze at the face of such people." The messenger was obviously terrified of bringing back his reading to the sage. However, the sage sent word that he should return without fear. Upon his return, the sage inquired about what had occurred. The messenger conveyed everything that he had heard, concluding, "That's why I was afraid to return to you." The sage replied, "Surely this physiognomist outshines all others. Everything he said about me is true. My internal inclination drives me and seduces me to commit all of the wrongdoing that the master saw. Yet I use my wisdom to refrain from acting on it."
Unbelievable story, right? Just because you've got problems inside, what we're learning over here is the outside does not have to be loyal to what's inside. And being a mensch means you know you've got problems and we've got to deal with those problems. Maybe that's going to be for another class. But right now, today, tomorrow, what is the world of Kabbalah teaching us? Today, November 1st, 2023, in the deep, frigid winter of Metro Detroit. What are we learning here?
Choice.
That we have a choice. We don't need to think the schmutz that's on the inside. We don't need to say it. We don't need to act upon it. That is the first and simple, empowering message. We are in control. Even if my natural tendency leans toward arrogance, I can still act modestly. Even if my character is more cynical, I can still speak favorably of others. And even if my inclination is to be anxious, I can still think comic thoughts. Simple as that.
Is
Yes?
Is that like now reacting to our first thought? I could have a negative, but I can
Oh,
stop that thought and I could change my action.
Right, exactly. So impulsively, you're going to want to think this. Comes and says, no, well, you could think 2 + 2 = 5. You don't have to think this impulsive negative thought. Exactly. Okay, one more simple and profound message. We're learning over here there's a system. One of the big teachings of Kabbalah is that God didn't create the world chaotically or sporadically or just in an immediate fashion. There's a real, serious system. And God created us also as well with a real system, a hierarchy, different worlds. And what we're learning in Kabbalah is every single step is important. And God created the world with 3 spiritual worlds, Buriya, Yetzirah, and Asiya. God created us with thought, speech, and action. For us to truly live up to our divine image, we have to make sure to use all 3 properly and in order. You see, some people are very good at thinking of good ideas, but they never end up doing it. Some people think of good ideas and they just right away react too quickly. They're too rash, too impulsive. They don't stop to think, to discuss it, to deliberate, to seek guidance. Some people speak and speak and speak, they never do. Some people do, they never think. Some people first do and then they try to think how to rationalize what they just did. That's backwards. There's all different types of things. Like the other guy, he said, I always wanted to be a procrastinator. I never got around to doing it. Okay. Or here's another good one. You ready for this? This is good. This is a deep one. 10 birds are sitting on a telephone line. 9 decide to fly away. How many birds are left on the telephone line?
10.
Why?
We just decided.
10. Because deciding means nothing. Decide to fly away. Did you or not? So what we're learning over here is it's important to have all 3 steps. We're creating the divine image. We live and bring out our divine image by properly living and activating all 3 of these worlds. Let's read this final text for today. Text 9 on page 29. Richard, we're up to you. This is from the Rebbe here.
All right. The behavior of properly functioning people is based on and guided by 3 things: thought, speech, and action. First comes thought. Those thoughts are then expressed via speech to others, such as when consulting friends who understand a specific field. For the sake of arriving at a clearer and more accurate picture of the matter, this allows a person to arrive at a particular conclusion whereby their thoughts and discussions are translated into concrete action. Thought alone is insufficient. Similarly, contemplation with subsequent discussion is not enough. We must bring our plans to action. At the same time, in order for an action to be complete, it must reflect the reality that it is simply the 3rd link in a chain, following forethought and helpful discussion. Otherwise, our action will be rash. When we engage all 3, thought, speech, and action, and in that particular order, we can reach our full potential, just as the hierarchy of the worlds is complete, only with all 3 worlds presented in their specific order.
We need to have all 3. And specifically as Jews, some mitzvahs involve the thought, like studying Torah. Some mitzvahs involve our speech, like praying, the things that we say, the way we speak. Some mitzvahs involve, they're action-based, what we do. Every single one of us has a natural proclivity to one of these 3. Some of us love thought Judaism. A good class, I'm in. Putting on tefillin, not as much. Some people's the opposite. They love practical Judaism. Put on tefillin, they're in. Do a mitzvah, they're in. But I don't have time to learn and pray and this, speech and action, speech and thought, it's too much. What we're learning here is we need to engage ourselves properly in all 3. We need to be involved in our Judaism on the level of thought. We need to be involved in our Judaism on the level of speech and on the level of action. This is what it means to be a human. This is what it means to be a Jew. And this is what it means to be living in the divine image. Every single step of the way is vital, is important, and is divine. This is the lesson number 2. The 3 steps of making an important decision and the 3 steps of living a Jewish life. We need to have all 3 steps. The need for all 3. Thinking must be translated into action, and we must ensure that our actions are preceded by proper consideration and consultation. It works always. Every step in the right order. Dear friends, as we conclude today's class, we're going to be doing something special. Every single week, we're going to be doing something special at the end. In the world of Hasidus, in the world of studying deep spiritual ideas, we don't just study it, but part of internalizing it is that we do active, contemplative meditation, which means we study, and then we spend a few minutes, we close the books, and we maybe even close our eyes if that's your style, and we want to think and internalize what happened. And the way we do this in Hasidic tradition is with a tune, a nigun, a song. There's once somebody who complained to the third Chabad Rebbe that he's studying Tanya, which is the fundamental text of Hasidus. It teaches us how to be a deeper spiritual person. He says, it's not touching me, it's not changing me, it's not affecting me. He says, you know why? Because learning Hasidus without the songs of Hasidus, it doesn't click. So what I want to do right now is I want to share with you a song. And we've never done this in a course before, okay? This is not going to be a guided meditation. This is for you. I'm going to close the lights, and if you want, you can close your eyes, not close your eyes. If you don't want to meditate, just enjoy the song, whatever you want. And let's think, what did we learn about today? What are the lessons we take out from it? How could we relate to it? Just allow these ideas to sit there in your mind, think about it, try to maybe get a little bit more in touch with them. And if it works out tonight, you'll let me know. This is going to be the plan for the next few classes. We're ready for the meditation? Here we go. Here's a wordless, I won't call it ancient, but this is old. This wasn't a song that was written to be commercially successful. This is an authentic song from the soul. There's no words to it. It's just the soul singing. It's a slow song, it's introspective, it's beautiful. Here we go. How was that? Good. There we go. We meditated it. We got a little bit more in touch with it. And that's that. Next week, dear friends, we're moving right along. The journey continues with the dawn of limitation. Thank you all so much for joining tonight. And I want to share with you that in this class we got a schedule. We're trying to make our way through this. But I really want you all to know that I'm always available. First of all, now, if you have any questions, if you want to talk, we could call me or email me during the week. I'm always available. This is a wonderful journey, and I don't want you to feel like this is like a lecture. Ready for a quick joke before you go home?
Always.
The guy, always, there you go. We could be here a whole night doing this. Okay, a guy's walking home from the bar at 2 a.m. This guy's stumbling, he's falling in the street. Police officer is driving by, and he says, where do you think you're going? She says, me? Where I'm going? I'm going to the lecture. Oh, no, where? The lecture? 2 a.m. You're not going to no lecture. He says, oh boy, you better believe I'm going to the lecture. Just follow me. I'm going to go home, knock on the door. My wife's going to be sitting there on the couch, and I'm going to get a lecture. So this is not the lecture. You're not going to the lecture, friends. We're here on a journey together to study, to enjoy, and I want you to know that. And thank you all for joining. This is such a wonderful experience. Upward and onward. Have a wonderful week. We'll see you all soon. Zygosm to everybody. Zygosm. There you go.